Welcome members, officers and the public here in the gallery or watching on the webcast to today's meeting of the Audit Panel. Please make sure that your electronic devices are switched off or to silent mode to avoid any unnecessary interruptions this morning. Can I start by asking our clerk, Maria Burton, if any apologies have been received?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. Can I ask the panel to note the recommendations set out at item 2 and ask if members have any other interests to declare? No. Can I ask the panel to note the membership and chairing arrangements for this panel as listed on the agenda? Noted. Thank you. Can we note the panel's terms of reference as listed on the agenda? Agreed. Thank you. Can we note the standing delegations of authority to me as the chairman of the panel as set out in the agenda? Thank you. Can I ask the panel to confirm whether there is any wish to discuss the exempt minutes? No? No, thank you. That's a no from the panel. A proposed factual amendment to the minutes has been received from David Galley, who is, of course, our Executive Director of Resources, to paragraph 5.13 on page 7 of the agenda. The text should read, "The GLA has access to an archive in Cheshire, not in Cumbria." Okay, so can we confirm the minutes of the Audit Panel meeting held on the 10th of March 2021, subject to the amendment to be signed by me as a correct record? Thank you. Can we note the ongoing actions arising from previous meetings of the Audit Panel? Thank you. We'll now receive the GLA external audit reports from Janet Dawson and Martina Lee from Ernst & Young, who are joining us virtually. Good afternoon, everyone. So if you'd like, I'm not sure which one of you is going to lead off with this.
I shall, Chair.
Lovely, thank you.
So what you have in front of you is the proposed audit plan for the audit of the 2021 financial statements for the GLA group. This has been put forward and taken to the Mayor for his approval and now comes to the Audit Panel for your review and any questions that you have on it. I'll take you very briefly through the executive summary and then happy to take questions. So you'll see from section 1, we've set out the overview of our audit strategy for the group and identified where the key areas of risk and focus are for the audit. And for those of you who were members of the panel previously, you'll note that there is no significant change in risk or focus in terms of the areas that we will be concentrating our audit effort on. There's a slight, we've reduced the risk associated with the pensions valuation somewhat this year, because although it's a material item, we're able to get assurance across from various specialists on the work that we need to do. And we've also reduced the risk associated with the business rates pooling and appeals provision as reflected in the accounts for 2021. And again, that's because of the work that we're able to do and the assurance that we're able to get, which is a relatively straightforward process these days. And you'll note that we've got a slight change in the going concern disclosures this year. Obviously, this was a major area of focus last year, really for the first time because of the changes and uncertainty around the impact of COVID on the authority. So we've slightly changed our approach in that in terms of building on our understanding of the financial position of the organisation and making sure that that's appropriately reflected within the accounts in the disclosures. You'll see that the materiality that we are auditing to is an enormous number of 57 million. We will bring any audit differences that we identify above 2.8 million to the Mayor's attention when we report out on the audit, and then obviously within our results report that will come to the Audit Panel. The major change that you'll see in the audit approach this year is actually about the way in which we do the value for money work, which looks at the arrangements in place for the organisation during the year to the 31st of March 2021. The NAO, who set the code of audit practice for us, has changed the emphasis of what we'll be looking at. And so you'll see on our page 12 we're required to provide a commentary on the arrangements that were in place during the year around financial sustainability, governance, and improving economy efficiency and effectiveness. And that will require us to do a risk assessment across those arrangements, do any additional work where we see a significant risk, and then provide a commentary back to the organisation, and actually for the use of external stakeholders, so your citizens, to describe the arrangements that we see in place and to make any recommendations for improvement. And we will be focusing, as I say, across those three domains as set out in the audit code. And that will be reported within 3 months of issuing the audit opinion. We're working on that at the moment and would hope to issue it at the same time as our audit opinion, which is due to come to the organisation by the 30th of September. That's what I was going to say. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, I'll just ask you really, what is the biggest area of concern for you?
In terms of the audit this year, it's a large, complex group. We need to look very carefully at the interrelationships between the organisations, how those get reported into the financial statements. So honestly, it's the delivery of the audit that is the significant concern in terms of getting through all of that work and being able to report by the 30th of September. And then clearly the commentary provide useful information about our assessment of the quality of the arrangements that have been in place during 2021 across key governance arrangements and decision making. That will be a more comprehensive piece of work than we have undertaken in the past, and it's important that we get the balance right in terms of what we see and where we see room for improvement. So as you know, one of the key areas of the code is to look at budgetary setting and monitoring and reporting, and I know that that's of key concern for members of the Assembly, and therefore that will be an area of focus for us. Okay, and with fraud cases increasing during the pandemic, I'd be grateful for assurances that there's no change to risk there. In terms of fraud, our responsibilities are set out within the audit plan. So we look for the risk, a significant risk of material misstatement to do with misreporting in fraud. Now, clearly, that's to do with the financial statements. Then management's responsibility is to ensure that governance arrangements are appropriate to prevent and detect fraud. And we will look at those arrangements as part of our overall financial reporting and also our VFM arrangements. So we need to be very clear what the external auditor's responsibility is in relation to the risk of fraud within the financial reporting of the statements. Okay, thank you. Nobody else has indicated, so nothing else to rewind? No. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for attending. Can we note the contents of the external auditor's GLA group audit planning report?
Great.
Noted, thank you very much. We now move on to our main item of business, which is to review the internal audit reports. Can I ask David Esling, Head of Audit and Assurance at the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime, which we call MOPAC, to take us through and introduce each report?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to take the panel to Appendix 1, which is our first full review of building safety within the GLA. This report received adequate assurance. There were 3 recommendations made, and these are detailed on pages 103. I'd just like to highlight some key areas. There's the key areas of effective control, where the roles and responsibilities for the administration of funds were clearly documented within the programme management and governance plans and allocated to the GLA building safety team. Also, the grant agreements include clearly set out terms and conditions, and funds have been awarded in line with the requirements, and the performance monitoring for the 3 funds has been established and detailed performance reports are produced on a regular basis. The recommendations, as I've indicated, are on page 103. However, the key risks for management action cover the memorandum of understandings need to be in place for funding streams and clearly set out roles and responsibilities. However, there is evidence of the sign-off by the GLA. We could not find that that had been provided. So there is a risk that compliance with the MOU is not undertaken. And as I say in the table, if we go to, as I say, page 103, that recommendation has been accepted. And the second one was the supporting documentation. Now that recommendation wasn't accepted. But I know that I'm not sure if Megan is on the call to take any questions that the panel may have on that, or I'm also here to take any questions on the report. However, the report, as I say, did receive an adequate assurance, and those recommendations will be reviewed at our follow-up and reported to subsequent audit panels.
I have got a question here, and who would take this, David?
I can take any questions. Megan's left on maternity leave, and since Monday I'm now the head of building safety.
Sorry, can you repeat that? I'm so sorry, your volume was down.
Oh, sorry about that. Just to say that since Monday I'm the acting head of building safety. Megan Lyth has left on maternity leave, so I can answer any questions that you might have today.
Right, excellent, that's good news. 9.3 on page 96 says that delays and errors have been highlighted on the report in relation to tenders issued and returned, works contracts, building control and start on site. The tracker enables the programme manager to have overview of the progress of buildings. So why have these delays and errors come about, and what is being done to manage the risk?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? I think my internet cut out momentarily. My apologies for that.
At 9.3 on page 96, well, you'll know what it says because it's your responsibility. Why have these delays and errors come about, and what is being done to manage the risk?
So I think it really varies on a case-by-case basis. These are like quite complex funding agreements, and I'm confident, and I think the audit shows that we've got the right measures in place to ensure that the team are kind of equipped to work with delivery partners to ensure that those funding conditions are discharged. We have found that the kind of nature of these programs, particularly in London, where like the sort of ownership arrangements of the private sector blocks has sometimes meant that the partners that we're dealing with, this is like a new process for them. There can be a lot of hand-holding, and so it can take more time than has been expected. The reasons for that really will vary on a case-by-case basis, and I could give a recent example if that's of interest to the panel. But so we've kind of taken that forward. I think the fact that these funds are becoming embedded, we've built relationships with all of the buildings which are now active in the fund, and each of our senior programme officers has a caseload of partners who they can communicate with. We're confident that those delays will kind of cease to be an issue in the future.
So we won't have delays and errors for the works contracts, building control, etc., going forward. Is that what you're saying?
So I'm saying that we won't have delay. We aren't expecting to have continued issues with delays due to errors. Where we may have issues with delays would be due to like industry capacity. So there's been some issues that we've identified, including due to like COVID and the pandemic and sickness, but also generally the size of the contracting industry that's capable of undertaking this kind of work is quite limited. And we do think that is a kind of ongoing risk which, you know, presents potential future delays. But in terms of the specific risk that you kind of referred to in the report, we're confident that we've got that under control at this stage.
Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that. But at 7.6 on the action plan, which had the date of the 30th of July, we're halfway through July. When will that be delivered? Will it be delivered on time on at the end of July?
So I expect it to be delivered on time. So I know that a request has been made to the IT team. I have a programme manager who's accountable for delivering that, and they're reporting to me. I think it's in process, and yeah, we're very aware of the target date.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll keep an eye on that, David. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'll take you to Appendix 2, which is our full review of London Power Control Framework. Overall, this received an adequate assurance. There were 2 recommendations, of which one is a priority 1. Just like to highlight the areas of effective control. The approval for the business case, the setting up of a GLA managed company and wholly owned subsidiary and awarding of the energy contract to Octopus Energy are in place and approved by the Mayor. Also, the accountabilities, roles and responsibilities have been clearly established, documented and allocated, and the governance structure is in place with the setting up of the London Power Company Board. The budgetary arrangements are in place and regular monitoring of the accounts takes place with London Power and the GLA Financial Services. Also, the reporting arrangements are clearly set and in place, and detailed management information is produced and submitted to the steering committee and working group on a regular basis. However, we did highlight, as I say, 2 recommendations, and these are detailed on page 1, just bear with me, 122 and 123. As I said, there was one priority 1, and this relates to the London Power quarterly reports being produced and accessed. And our recommendation is that regular monitoring of the performance and costs of London Power is continued to ensure that London Power can meet all costs and the GLA do not incur a financial loss. As you can see, the management response here, the cost and performance of London Power are regularly monitored and reported on a monthly basis. Our recommendation 2, this is that London Power risk register is submitted to the steering committee, reviewed and updated on a regular basis. This has been accepted, and again this will be, the target date for that was 31st of July. I understand Chetton's here to take any questions along with myself with anything contained in the report.
Yes, I'm very concerned
about this. And we've also got
this.
James on remotely as well.
Right, okay. Clearly there's a real problem when you've got more money going out than coming in. I mean, that's basic stuff. And on the risk 9.5 to 9.7 on page 122, they're listed as high risk. What are you doing to make sure that it's cost effective?
So, as we say, we're a startup. We only started last year. So, with many startups, you have a sort of number of sort of fixed costs to cover. So, what you can see is, through the year as we've grown customers, our income has grown, and our the percentage of our costs that is covered by income has been growing through the year. In terms of what we're doing to sort of increase customer numbers, as we've stated in the report, there's a sort of growth plan in place which is scrutinised by our steering committee and our working group. So we're looking to increase customer numbers through a range of different different channels and sort of ways of getting customers.
When are you planning for it to be cost neutral, or even make a profit? Dare I say?
I come in. I mean, look, we hope to for it to become cost neutral as soon as possible. It's all contingent on the amount of customers that we acquire, and we're taking action on multiple fronts to do that. Chet just mentioned a few around borough engagement, around marketing, around working with various anchor institutions to get people to switch. So it's not uncommon for a startup of this nature to have to start to draw down less over time on its loan and then repay it. And we've already seen the loan being drawn down far less as customers go up. So we're hoping to break even within the first 4-year contractual term with our partner Octopus, but we can't exactly state when that's likely to be.
We understand the economics of it, which is why we're concerned, because it's not looking as good as I would have thought it should be. I know it's a start-up, we all get that, but nevertheless, it's the GLA's giving the money or loaning the money. It's at some point, it begs the question, is it worth it for the GLA and Londoners? At what point are you going to be asking yourself that question?
Well, I think we're very pleased in the fact that we have already served 5,500 Londoners through London Power, and they are benefiting from, green, affordable energy. Many of those households are making quite considerable savings, and you'll see hopefully very soon in our annual review that the average saving is in the order of about £175 per year per customer, with actually those on the cheapest plan getting even more than that, over nearly £210 per year. And I think the aggregate of that is around nearly £250,000 worth of bill savings for Londoners. So they are also benefiting from some of the key attributes, if you like, of London Power. That is that, the majority of the energy market works in a way where customers are teased in with low price offers for the first year, and they're rolled over to very expensive standard variable tariffs. This is actually different in London with London Power. We have a rate rollover promise, which means that given so few people switch, particularly in London, that mechanism ensures that those that sign up with London Power are always having affordable energy.
Yeah, that sounded like a sales pitch, which is fine, but we're looking at the cost effectiveness of it and the cost to Londoners. I accept that perhaps your customers are doing well, but at the expense of whom? And that's something we've got to be looking at. I expect that's something we'll be looking at in future. David Galley.
Chairman, if I might, just to add to James's comments, I mean, clearly, I share your concerns about the value for money here and when actually it will start to break even and repay the loan. That's obviously a very serious issue for us and monitoring that very closely. The thing I think I'd add to the moment is obviously decisions to be made about, as James has described, about how it's moved towards break even and also how that loan is then repaid. But the thing I want to emphasise at the moment, the GLA's liability here, is capped to the investment we've made already together with that loan. So rather than some of the other companies that local authorities have had, Nottingham, for instance, and Bristol, we're in a very different situation in terms of minimising our liabilities here. But it remains an issue of great concern, which we'll monitor very closely.
Yes, I'm glad you're concerned, Mr. Galley. So am I. Could remind us all how much the loan is of Londoners' money to this?
It's 906,000. 906,000.
Right. Okay. I think we should be keeping an eye on that. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have a question? Yes.
Just on that same issue, because I must confess to being one of the 5,521 with London Power as well. So. You've obviously mentioned the benefits to customers, but I just wanted that further assurance from you, maybe, David, on the wider GLA group and the financial impact. Will the slow rate in getting that financially neutral position mean any additional impact on other budget decisions that the GLA group makes?
I mean, clearly one of the options would be to make further investment into London Power to help them promote numbers. But obviously that's bought at scarce resources being used for that as against something else that might be a equally important priority for the Mayor. So there are choices that need to be made around how we ensure the viability of the company and the repayment of the loan. So this is work that we're looking at very closely, and I think there'll be issues that we need to bring forward around how this is resolved, reasonably quickly over this financial year.
Okay. Before I come to Assembly Member Fortune, I think that was a declaration of interest from Assembly Member Hirani. Assembly Member Fortune.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a quick question about attracting customers. I noticed that there's no commission paid for people switching over to use this London Power provider. Do you think that's having an impact on stopping people switch, especially if they're being fed through from some of the bigger comparison websites?
So was this for in the report around the price commission websites? And
yeah.
So a lot of companies who join the market sort of pick up customers by having a combination of very low price, headline price, and paying commission to the switching sites. Yeah. Our prices, our quotes aren't available on those. They're available on those switching sites, but you'd have to press the button to show the whole of market rather than the just the companies that pay the switching site. So it's something we're looking to do in terms of a trial of how effective that channel would be. But again, you've got to weigh up in the cost of that commission versus sort of any income that comes in.
I understand. I
So-
just
so
wondered
we're
if that was the margin that was maybe
just got to
making the
keep
difference.
we're mindful of that balance.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's something we're going to trial.
Because then presumably people switching away from London Power somewhere else, there's going to be a commission paid on that.
Yeah, through those sites.
Yeah, okay. Just one quick request as well. Because I'm reading the papers off of the screen, can we use the smaller numbers on the appendix? Because I haven't got the pack printed out. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Well, because we have no printers. This building is falling apart, everyone. Okay, back to you, David Esling. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we move on to Appendix 3. This was our review of the apprenticeship programme and delivery. As you will see from the report, this received a substantial assurance, and our review identified that the scheme is working effectively. There are detailed GLA apprenticeship scheme guidelines that set out the scheme's aims, objectives and the funding structure. There's clearly defined apprenticeship standards that are in place for each apprenticeship, and there are clearly defined GLA business objectives to support the delivery of the apprenticeship scheme and meet the Department of Education and Public Sector Apprenticeships target of 2.3% of the workforce per year. Also, I'd like to highlight that the funding objectives for the apprenticeship scheme are properly approved. As I say, this has received substantial assurance without any recommendations. I do note Charmaine's here, so if any panel members wish to ask myself or Charmaine any questions on anything detailed in the full report, then please fire away.
Colleagues, I had nothing to pick up on that. No, that's fine. Thank you very much. Right, we go on to the next one.
Okay, so Appendix 4, this is our follow-up review of the GLA risk management framework. There were 2 recommendations made in the original full review. These have been, well, the first one was implemented, the second one has not been implemented, and this is due to obviously the current COVID situation. However, there are early discussions looking at implementing that recommendation now that we're moving out of lockdown. However, this has received a substantial assurance rating. Just like to highlight also, we've identified in the follow-up review that the GLA have undertaken a review of their risks, the strategic risks as part of the risk management process, and although the risk register I note is being spoken to later in the pack, that the result of that risk review will, I think, will be brought to the next committee. As an outcome of that, we will then review our audit plan, as it's an indicative and it's a risk-based approach. So we will highlight any changes that have been identified in the risk process. But just to highlight that the risk process of the GLA is and the framework is good, and as I say, it's received a substantial rating.
Okay. 9.4 of the action plan on page 144 has a new target date of October. Can we have an assurance that that won't slip again?
I'm happy to do that, Chairman. The issue is that, as David has said, because we as the GLA have looked at our own corporate risk register and looked to fundamentally change that, I'd be very keen to try and use that same more strategic framework to help those discussions that we're having with colleagues across the group. So looking to that as very much a framework for how we will try and standardise and capture the genuine risks that our PAN group, because I think the framework we've developed will be helpful in that conversation.
Okay, I agree with that. Thank you very much. Colleagues? No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For the next appendices 5, 6 and 7, these are reviews that we undertake of the various fundings, as you will see that we've reviewed those funds and given our opinion that they have been dealt with in accordance with the guidelines. In most cases, this is the EU Transition Business Readiness Grant funding, the supplemental growth hub funding to local enterprise partnerships, and we'll have two of those. Willing to take any questions on that, but these are an audit of those particular funds and an assurance that they are being dealt with and produced in the way that we would expect.
Okay, so there's no cause for concern or anything that should be looked at further. Okay, that's good, thank you.
Appendix 8, and I note that Appendix 9 I think is just a copy of Appendix 8, so I just take Appendix 8. This was our a report that's produced in accordance with the terms of our letter of engagement for the purpose of reporting to the GLA and the BEIS in connection with the grant claim for monies. Again, this is an assurance report of how those funds have been dealt with, and as you'll see on, hopefully you can see this, page 156, but it's our conclusion is, in our opinion, the schedule has been prepared in all material respects, and the expenditure has been incurred in accordance with the grant funding agreement, and that's as an audit section we're required to undertake, and as I say, that conclusion supports that view.
Chairman, if I could just add to what David has said, one of the things that we've looked at particularly here is we've been required to ensure there's external scrutiny audit of these funds. And often the case has been in the past, we've actually hired in at great expense, with one of the external firms, but we've been able to use David's facilities via MOPAC as a cheaper and an equally effective option to ensure that assurance is given to our external partners. So it's a means by which we've used value for money, but also the resources that David has to best effect.
Absolutely. Cheaper and effective. That's good. That's good. In this section, there was a letter sent to the directors and the Secretary of State for Business for Energy and Industrial Strategy on the 28th of April. Has there been a response?
I've looked to my colleague Mark. I don't know who carried out that tip review.
Do you want to write to me about that?
We will find out. We'll follow that up, and yes, we'll report that.
Would please, just so that we know what was said. Do you want to go? Yeah.
Thank you. So moving on to Appendix 10, I shall cover, this is our quarterly report of work undertaken. You'll see that it talks to the reviews that I've just highlighted and spoken to you as panel. Just to highlight, there are 3 audits that are at draft stage and will be brought to the next panel, which include rough sleepers, the land fund investment, which is the government process and public correspondence team. I can talk to this, but I mean, if there are any questions on that, our performances we've for the year ending 2021, we completed the budget 440 days, and in Appendix B, this details those the reviews that are currently completed, the work in progress, and those that are planned going forward.
Okay, the network advisory audit was scheduled for April, but it's listed as work in progress.
Yes, that is ongoing at the moment. We expect to report back to the panel in September.
Why is it running so late?
We've currently got another review in the IT department, so it's a case of managing resources, our resources, and the IT department's resources as well, because it's getting key people to speak to on that. So we will, as I say, we will report that back to the panel going forward.
Is that a plea for more resources to make sure audit is...
No, it's just managing those resources.
Are you listening, David Gelling?
No.
I think that was a plea for resources.
I mean, I think to do David justice here, I think there is a rationale that David is combining the 2 IT audits, but I mean, Chairman, just as we know in all the correspondence we've had, particularly around cyber, this is a particularly serious issue which we're taking, great attention on, and there's a lot of work being done, and obviously we rely upon, David as an important check upon that work to ensure that we remain secure.
I agree with that, and if extra resources is needed for that, then they are, because we've had this out before, and it has been of great concern to this panel. So
I mean, perhaps I can address that in
that.
the monthly cyber report that we'll be sending to you shortly, as well, around ensuring that we are satisfied that there actually isn't a shortage of internal audit resources to ensure you have assurance around this work.
Okay, well, I look forward to that report. Thank you very much. Right, we can move on.
And I'd like to take you to Appendix 11, which is our annual report of work, internal audit work that has been undertaken during the last year, 2020-2021. Our annual opinion is detailed. It's on page 167 or page 1 of that report. So the GLA has an adequate internal control environment which is generally operating effectively. We arrive at that rating based on our work that, as I say, we've undertaken during the past year. It also takes into account the corporate governance framework of the GLA, which has been clearly defined. Also the risk management framework, and we undertake a review, as I've spoken to already, as part of that work, and there's been an extensive review of the risks that David has already mentioned, that will be taken forward at GLA, so we can place reliance on that. It also details the material systems work that we do as part of the internal audit activity, and it also then details all the reviews that have been undertaken, as I say, in the past 12 months up to April 2021. I'm willing to take any questions that the panel may have on any areas detailed in that report. But as I say, our assurance rating is that the GLA has adequate controls and insurance in place.
One of the things I wanted to really highlight was this cyber security. I was promised an update every month to be sent to me and the Mayor because of such concern. I mean, Len remembers it well. At the last meeting, and I think the one before then, I think I've had one report and I haven't had any more. Can you?
There's a draft that literally I'm finalising, and obviously as I've mentioned just now, I'll include also the internal audit. So expect that report to be sent to yourself and the Chief of Staff imminently.
Yes, please. Thank you, because we've highlighted it's an issue, and other places are finding that they're having problems with this. It's been highlighted for quite some time, and I'm just concerned that we're not picking up as much as we should. But I hear your clarification on it. What David Esling, do you have the most concern about?
As a whole from the audit, from an audit planning perspective.
Indeed.
I think our reviews cover, as I say, that it's a risk-based approach that we cover. We ensure that we approach our audit work to cover the highest risks that GLA have over a period. I mean, you've spoken about a particular review just there. I think that shows that we're hopefully looking at the right things. And obviously, if there's any concerns that are raised during that, they're reported to the panel, and the GLA do take those very seriously. So I think, as the things that concern me, I think it's that the audit approach is highlighting any issues from our risk-based approach, and once those are identified, that come into the audit panels such as this. The GLA, respond to those reviews and obviously respond to any questions that the panel have. So.
Okay, all right. I'm satisfied with that so far. Is anybody else? No. Okay. Can we note the internal audit reports attached to the report? Okay. Right. Corporate. Now we go on to the corporate risk register. I don't know if you wanted to say anything, David. You don't need to. Shall I just ask, do colleagues have any comments? No?
And Chair, if I could just say that what we're intending to do is to see for your next meeting to then submit our reformatted corporate risk register. So I think it would be important for your next meeting that we dwell significant time on the changes that we've made and the things that we have suggested now as the register. So I think it'd be an important discussion.
I note that at C16, that would be you, wouldn't it? The City Hall relocation is a risk.
Very much so. Obviously, there's a detailed dialogue I know that's been going on around that with the chief officer. Clearly, it remains a risk in terms of ensuring that we can move on time. Managing all the particular risks involved. There's a weekly programme board that the chief officer chairs, which I'm part of, together with relevant officers, where we ensure that we're managing those risks. And there's obviously separate reporting that we're making into yourselves privately as the Assembly around the progress on that. But, it clearly remains a risk that we're managing very tightly.
Yes, I just wonder, it's new to the risk register, isn't it?
It's new from a previous version, but yes, of course, it's been a significant risk, I think, since the Mayor's decision.
Okay, I think I commented on why wasn't it there before, but we'll see. Okay, no other questions? Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. For a non-auditor, when you look at these reports, you just go straight to the reds. As a new member, I was sort of comparing the current register with the previous register, and there's a definite sort of trend upwards. Now, I know some of that's addressed in the paper, but first question is there a sort of overall concern about these being addressed? The second is, when the new CRR comes in, how will that, I know it's going to be more strategic and that's the driver for it, but how will it change the way that some of these risks are managed and reported?
Yeah, I think the problem that we have with existing registers is actually there's too much there, which means that attention is effectively diluted down. So there are the risks that are present there, which are still being managed, say, the Museum of London, for instance, which is obviously still a risk. But I don't think it necessarily merits and potentially draws attention away from genuinely what are the bigger corporate risks, such as cyber or even the City Hall relocation. So the idea is very much we focus in senior managers' attention onto those risks that really we need to focus in on, because my sense is that this register has got too much accretion over time of a number of risks that haven't been deleted. Actually, in terms of ensuring that we put sufficient attention on the risks that really matter. But that's not to distract from the fact that alongside this more strategic register, we are looking to ensure there is clear accountability for the risks that still remain, which won't be on the corporate risk register. So again, there's clear monitoring. So the idea is that, say, of a package of corporate risks around, the risks to the organisation, such as arising from the pandemic or the things that would potentially hit the running of the organisation. It wouldn't distract from the management of, say, cyber or City Hall relocation, but would actually put it in a better context to ensure that management attention is there to ensure we can mitigate those risks.
And so who has the final sign-off on what's on that register?
So what we will be doing is that is a collective decision by corporate management team, which would then bring, obviously, to the panel here and to the Chief of Staff and the Mayor.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Okay, so can I ask the panel to note the substantial changes to the corporate risk register which will be made ahead of the autumn iteration? Noted, thank you very much. We're on to monitoring of expenses and taxable benefits. Do members have any questions on the corporate risk register? No? Okay, can I ask the panel to note the taxable benefits and expenses incurred by the Mayor, London Assembly members and senior staff. Now we're on to Audit Panel Work Programme. I think I can just say, can I ask the panel to note the work programme? Thank you very much. The next meeting of the panel will be confirmed in due course by the London Assembly. I have no other urgent business, so it concludes today's meeting. Thank you, everyone.